You are fake news.
Meow! Huples cat, you are fake news. So am I. Fake news is spread by people to other people, and it can be a source of good and a source of evil. Currently, it's mostly a source of evil. One of the problems with misinformation is that people actually don't believe that they're susceptible to it. They believe that they are able to identify and deal with false information, and that frankly isn't true. If you look at this, you might believe it to be true because it's printed in text and it's traditional media, but you may also have some doubts about whether the moon in fact will explode in 6 months, and if you had waited 6 months you would find that the story wasn't true. I also don't think most people would believe, and some will believe because everybody will believe because they've been pre-programmed to believe certain things, like extreme religions will actually believe that there is a possibility that Satan was in Iraq and that the American army actually captured him because he's a him. But Satan, if he existed, would be a demigod, and it's kind of unlikely that American GIs could capture Satan and take him off to Guantanamo Bay. But again, you know, who's going to fall for that, right? Well, what about human-caused climate change? A lot of people decline to believe the science and believe the misinformation that's been churned out for years by millions and millions of people and well funded, that there is no such possibility, there's no such thing as human-caused climate change. Well, it's very easy to see a picture like this and believe it, believe the title, and it isn't. It's out of context. So you take a picture that's out of context and then you give a title to it that people who actually are strongly with you or opposed to certain things are going to see that information and they're going to get confirmation bias. Confirmation bias proves that I'm right and these bunch of hippies are awful, evil, trashy people. Whereas in fact, it's got nothing to do with the Extinction Rebellion. These days we have a pandemic, a real pandemic that's killing about 2 to 3% of everybody that catches it, that we have effective vaccines for, that a lot of people aren't using because they don't believe in science, or they don't believe in what they're being told, or they don't believe data, or whatever. They've been programmed to believe misinformation, and in fact it's even worse because there's also something out there called direct lying for reasons, but I'll get into that a bit later on. So you might see something like this, which is completely false, it's untrue, it's misleading, it is in fact deceptive, it's lying. And you might see that and you want to do yoga so badly and you really don't like the pandemic and you don't like the restrictions, minimal as they are on you, and you're unhappy about the economic events and all the rest of it. You see that and you think, hey, that's true. Why can't I do hot yoga? Viruses are known to be damaged by high humidity and high heat. Yeah, a lot higher humidity and a lot higher heat than you're going to get in a yoga studio to kill them all. That's besides the point, isn't it? But then you read the comments, and the comments are actually reinforcement of your point of view. So you leave this with a doubt or a belief that is wrong, that is false, and that anchors further information you get that is wrong and misleading into a worldview that is wrong and misleading. And that's why a lot of people aren't vaccinated. Simply put, you need to be getting vaccinated as fast as you can. It is the safest and most effective method of not catching COVID-19, not passing along COVID-19, and not dying from COVID-19. But people have convinced themselves by information that's false and misleading that they personally don't need to do so, or even worse, that the vaccines in fact are worse than the disease, which is completely and absolutely untrue. But what about doctors? I'm a retired nurse, I just retired. I know a lot about pandemics, I know a lot about organising healthcare around pandemics. This is the 3rd pandemic I've been through, and I'm happy to be retired. But what about this? When you see a doctor telling you something like this, would you not believe it? Well, it's completely untrue. It's absolute farcical. You know, we test for and find viruses all the time outside of the human body, but it gives you a basis for confirmation bias and distrust. That is key. It's little chipping away at your worldview to make you believe something that's not true, and then even worse, then providing you evidence over and over that it's untrue. So why are so many small preppers so adamantly anti-vaccine, so adamantly anti-doing sensible and sane precautions like shaving to deal with a pandemic? Because they actually practice, hobby, live a lifestyle to mitigate SHTF, and COVID pandemic is an SHTF. But they've been very directly ignoring it, denying it, and now pumping out false information. There's several people who you probably have noticed are no longer on my channel who are doing that all the time. They're doing it with small live streams of 20 to 30 committed psychopaths who believe that vaccines don't really work and the whole thing's a load of garbage and it's done to erode their freedoms in America, ignoring it's a global pandemic, etc., etc. Why is that a problem? Well, it turns out that the small channels repeating this information that they're getting in part or largely from 12 major sources are actually causing the misinformation pandemic, the infodemic that's occurring. And it's killing people. And it's keeping the economy shut down, and it's doing a whole bunch of evil, terrible things. And even worse, it's causing restrictions. We have to have pandemic passports now. Why? Because 20% of the people aren't vaccinated and they're spreading it and they're ending up in the hospitals. But this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated in October 2021 in the Western world. Sadly, in a large part of the earth, it's a pandemic of everyone because almost nobody's vaccinated, and that's a real problem. We need to deal with that. But why is misinformation so toxic and so pervasive?
I know by first-hand knowledge for a fact that he's been convicted as a traitor to the United States.
How?
I don't want to go into it that much because you know that movie Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom?
Yes.
Well, once upon a time when he was in the CIA, he led a bunch of CIA agents and their children into a trap, and that was at a physical Temple of Doom, like from the movie.
Was that the giant boulder rolling through the tunnel as Harrison Ford is sprinting through to safety?
That's an exaggeration, but there was a trap in there like that.
Can you describe to the best of your ability what exactly this Temple of Doom looks like?
Oh, it's a stone temple. It's in UK.
It's in England.
Yeah.
Gavin Newsom took a bunch of CIA agents and their families down there.
He had an event over there a long time ago. But anyways, he was given the name Newsom because the people working in the government have a sense of humor.
I find my mind shrinking when I listen to that gibberish. But that man has had confirmation bias and has had evidence that proves what he's saying is real to him. And it's clear gibberish. I can assure you we have very few, if any, temples of doom in the United Kingdom. Why is he doing this? Because he hates Newsom in California. And in fact, if you actually are aware of it, whether you are left or right or American or not, if you were aware of the Californian recount vote, there was huge evidence there for the people that wanted Gavin Newsom removed that they were going to win. And they got stuffed. They got crushed. The popular will was fairly quiet and silent, whereas the minority were loud and vocal. And the loud and vocal minority, thank goodness, in a democracy, lost. But they cause a lot of trouble. And it's very interesting. This is very attractive. This theory about children and CIA agents and all the rest of it, it is interesting and it's compelling. Whereas the real truth isn't that interesting, is it? Which I guess is the value of President Obama. I guess that's how much he was worth. Leaving that aside, and that was an example of sarcasm and humour and irony, which is also a method that misinformation is spread by. Make no mistake, this is a global phenomenon with global impact. Now, I've recently heard that the southern US border is a major source of COVID-19 infiltration into the United States, which is absolutely, completely untrue. Really is untrue. The facts, the statistics do not base that. You may be against immigration, legal or illegal, in the Southern American border. You don't need to link it with a pandemic that's got nothing to do with that immigration. And yet, people do, and people are. And I've seen it on my own channel. People saying it's the Mexicans. We need to get the Mexicans out because they're coming over and spreading stuff. And they're not. They're really not. And nor are the Haitians, nor is the Guatemalans. This is all to do with human-caused climate change and a lot to do with droughts in Central and South America that is not being covered very well by real news or even fake news. And that's why I'm particularly annoyed at these small channels without any healthcare background whatsoever. Political channels, a lot of them, they're not prepping channels. They're really not. They are actually causing the information pandemic and causing people not to be vaccinated who should be, and causing illness and death. And yet they absolutely adamantly do not believe that they are, but they are. They're responsible. And so are we, if we comment, even positively or negatively, on their video and give them traction. And that's exactly what they're doing. They like nothing better than to attack me who've got a Master of Science in Nursing. They like nothing better to attack me for being wrong about COVID-19 from a position of absolute ignorance on their part, where their only source of information, generally speaking, are Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. They're not really reading science reports. They'll quote them because they've read them in a Facebook report, and they're usually out of context. And I think the novelty thing is huge right now. There's endless videos out there that America's about to collapse. There's endless videos of empty shelves. And yet the truth is far, far, far from a collapse scenario. And I'm a prepper, and I think people should be prepped. But I don't think people should be being prepped based upon false and misleading information. But it's even worse. Fake false news makes people angry and disgusted and surprised. And surprise is a phenomenal driver in the human intellect. We come across information that is surprising to us, we are much more likely to read it, digest it, and worse, share it. By condemning a large number of Americans to death, avoidable death from COVID vaccination, by putting doubt on vaccination where there is no doubt, they believe that they're being patriotic, where in fact the truth is they're very, very far from patriots. In fact, they're not patriots if you think about it.
False news exhibited significantly more surprise and disgust in the replies to false tweets. And true news exhibited significantly more anticipation, joy, and trust in reply to true tweets.
Because I'm pro-science and pro-vaccine, and because I'm a high-level nurse, one of the things I often get is that I'm a bot account, or I'm controlled by bot account. The truth of it is, when you do the science, bots both negative and positive, bots that push truth, bots that push fake. They actually have the same amplifying effect. They do amplify the information, spread it, but they do it to the same extent. The truth is, it's the small channels with 100, 200, 300 subscribers who are doing boring, really boring live streams on a regular basis that are getting confirmation bias from their subscribers and giving confirmation bias to their subscribers that are insidiously undermining vaccination efforts. A lot of prepper channels out there actually did lots and lots of videos on Jade Helm in 2018, a military exercise in southern United States, where they claimed that the UN was going to invade. And that's frankly impossible because the UN doesn't have enough troops to do so, nor the inclination, and that Obama wasn't going to step down at the end of his term and was going to be re-elected as emperor for life. And I still have seen zero retractive videos on those topics. People that did those topics really damaged America. They really pitted left and right against each other in very stark terms. Very, very stark terms. And it was all a complete and absolute lie.
Fake news of it.
And I'm doing that these days. I'm not going to be doing the heart and the like and all the rest of it and the thumbs up on videos that are just gibberish or in fact misleading and or in fact dangerous. I'm going to be much more discerning on how I thank people for commenting on my channel, because by commenting on my channel, even in a negative way, you are driving more people to watch my videos, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Mentioned in Forbes magazine, it's just nothing but a corporate rag. However, people are able to manipulate truth. That makes certain people believe that all media is lies and the government is all lies and the government is all evil. Black and white thinking, when you believe something to be 100%, I agree with you 100%, I agree with you 100%. Never agree with anybody 100%, because you know what? You never do. Always going to be subtlety, there's always going to be anomalies. But let's have a look, because in the COVID world, things are getting a little bit more hot for people who are spreading lies.
His name is Dr. Patrick Phillips. He appears on a video earlier this year.
Asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic spread are negligible to non-existent.
At a time when medical professionals are encouraging people to get vaccinated, warning about the continued risks of COVID-19, the Ontario doctor has been playing down the virus. Turn off your TVs and radio. It's obvious the cases are completely falsified, he tweeted last week. He likened government health measures here to what happened in Nazi Germany. During the Third Reich, doctors and nurses actively killed disabled children, he said. And on vaccination, he said, employers are violating the law when attempting to find out if workers are vaccinated.
All three of those claims are absolute rubbish, and this is an example not of misinformation from the doctor, but of deliberate deception. He's deliberately deceiving people to allow people not to get vaccinated so they'll get ill and sick. Why he's doing it, I don't know.
When physicians speak out, if the position they're speaking out on is different than evidence-based medicine, it is very, very problematic.
Ontario's College of Physicians and Surgeons says Dr. Phillips has gone too far, forbidding him to write patients letters of exemption from wearing a mask or getting vaccinated, saying Phillips engaged in disgraceful, dishonorable, or unprofessional conduct and failed to maintain the standard of practice of the profession. It says he made misleading, incorrect, or inflammatory statements about vaccinations, treatments, and public health measures for COVID-19, and alleged Phillips is incompetent when it comes to communications.
Doctors need to really accept evidence-based medicine as the platform of what they do. And there's no question about that. And there's broad consensus that vaccination is in the public best interest.
This means that we can take our lives back.
Dr. Phillips didn't respond to an interview request, but he did reply to a Global News tweet about his case. Never have I been more proud of myself than the day I decided to take a stand against our country's medical tyranny, he says. For now, Dr. Phillips is still able to practice medicine at 3 small Ontario hospitals. A full hearing into the allegations has not been scheduled.
Across the globe, registered nurses who've spoken out with loud voices against medical tyranny and the cover-up that doesn't exist have actually had their registrations removed. I can only hope he loses his registration to practice as an MD. He obviously and clearly has a derangement effect going on, and I don't want somebody like that as my doctor. But the truth of this matter is, whatever happens to him, he has a big following, and he's going to get money, and he'll be invited around the world to speak out, even if he loses his registration to practice. But people are getting really, really annoyed about these types of lies that are being spoken as truth.
Completely untrue, and saying things like that puts people at risk, and you should be ashamed of yourself, Revol.
Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi appears to have had it with the spread of misinformation about COVID-19 and the vaccine. During a Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board meeting last week, Nenshi wouldn't sit by and let Foothills County Reeve Suzanne Ohl go unchecked when she said the vaccine had only been tested on animals.
To say it was only tested on animals is a lie, and in fact it was today approved fully by Health Canada for full use because it underwent the largest human tests in history. So lies are not opinion, Revol, and that is a lie. Stop educating yourself from YouTube videos. Read the science.
Ohl also called the vaccine experimental and was called on by the chair to stick to the facts throughout the meeting.
You may distrust vaccines, you may be really concerned about the origin of the virus and all of that stuff that's common with anti-vaxxers. The truth of it is that it was open and transparent, and it was part of a pandemic plan the WHO had arranged years before the pandemic hit to actually get us a vaccine that works as fast as possible. So a lot of the human trials, which were huge human trials, by the way, and all the vaccines, were done concurrently. So you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 trials done concurrently. So it will be done as fast as possible. This is called acceleration. This is how America put men on the moon, and yes, they did put men on the moon. This is how it's done. Previously worked in one of Canada's largest teaching hospitals. We had 0 vaccine side effects patients admitted this year. 0. We had hundreds of COVID patients admitted and a few hundred that died. And Canada, and Toronto specifically, has a large uptake of vaccination, and that's good, and that's why Ontario is not in the position that Manitoba and Alberta and Texas and Florida and on it goes are in, because most of our population actually heard enough real information to make a real decision, which was to get vaccinated.
YouTube says it has had enough of vaccine misinformation on its site.
Well, the company is taking down anti-vaccine videos and banning major accounts because it says it needs to, quote, remove egregious, harmful content.
Full disclosure, I've had 2 videos removed. The first one was going to be my last ever anti-vaccination is wrong video, so I just kind of left it and didn't even complain, which I should have done, because it wasn't an anti-vax video. The last one that was took down is the second one in the series, the one before this one, and YouTube quite quickly actually looked at it and said, oh yep, sorry, it isn't an anti-vaccine video. But they're going to act. Now a lot of people out there, the same people that are spreading misinformation and lies on YouTube, are going to claim that this is anti-democratic, anti-free speech, and they have every right to put up anti-vaccine videos. No, you don't. We're in a pandemic, we're in a global pandemic that's killed millions of people, has the potential to kill millions more, and you are trying to subvert the vaccination program, which is the only way out of this.
Anti-vaccine misinformation has always really thrived on YouTube. Really for over a decade, anti-vaccine creators have moved there after traditional media decided to no longer cover them. And the content was actually so rampant that pro-vaccine advocacy organizations, they were actually forced off the platform as far back as 2008. So the difference now is obviously COVID. YouTube explained it to me in a blog post, and they said, this is a quote, "We've steadily seen false claims about the coronavirus vaccines spill over into misinformation about vaccines in general, and we're now at a point where it's more important than ever to expand the work we started with COVID-19 to other vaccines.
A lot of people want to hug anti-vaxxers and give them space to talk and argue it through with them. I don't. In October 2021, these people are harmful. What they're saying online is harmful. When people are commenting and accepting what they're saying, it's harmful. When people give them a thumbs up or a watch or make even a negative comment about their content, it's harmful. It's propagating a wave of lies that is harmful and killing people, making people not take the vaccine and allowing them to get sick and die.
So we know then that YouTube is taking down some of the big names in the anti-vaxxer community. What about the smaller channels that are still out there, that are still operating?
Yeah, this is a challenge. I heard the good doctor say that we need to take down, the big disinformation agents, but a lot of the smaller anti-vaccine misinformation is still there. Listen, banning all anti-vaccine content, it's not going to be easy. It's a complicated content moderation problem because anti-vaxxers are very good at evading the platforms. And so we're just going to have to wait to see how well they do. It's important to note that anti-vaxxers have been very open about the fact that they were going to use COVID as a way in to raise money, to grow their base, and they're not just going to go away now.
So if you're not vaccinated, don't expect to be able to make videos explaining why. And if you're not vaccinated, don't expect to be able to go into restaurants and cinemas with vaccinated people and enjoy normal life. You have put yourself in a control group that clearly is a dangerous place to be. Not because of tyranny, because it's a really dangerous thing. This disease is terrible and you need to avoid catching it. And the only way to really avoid catching it is to take it. I do think, specifically because of the fourth wave of hitting the unvaccinated populations of the West, that you will see increasing coercive control. The social media platforms know that if they don't remove this content, they're going to get regulated by the governments, and that's the last thing they want. They've spent millions of dollars avoiding that. And it's actually, although it generates a certain amount of interest on the platform, it doesn't really attract advertising. Nissan and Toyota don't want to be attached to anti-vax videos when people are dying from lack of vaccines. It's just simply bad business. One of the worst flashlights you can get as a prepper for emergency response, for many reasons which I'm not going to go into. But you've probably seen videos, probably from people you trust and like, selling you OLED videos lately, and I bet they didn't have paid promotion on the video, which they're supposed to have, and I bet you they didn't pay for their OLED, and if they did, they wasted their money. One of the things you've got to be aware of is that just because you like somebody and you like their content, you've got to stay skeptical about all of their new content, especially when it's triggering surprise, disgust, fear and emotion. And of course in prepping, I want to trigger all of those things in you. I want you to wake up a little bit more and take more preps in more serious ways, but I also want you to try and mitigate the likelihood of SHTF even happening. Most preppers seem to want SHTF to happen. I really don't. It would really, really ruin my... In fact, social media is so toxic and bad for health development. A lot of the people who own and control and write software for social media companies, in fact, don't even have internet in their own homes and don't even have email accounts that they use themselves. They pay for people to do it for them because we're giving these people a huge amount of power and money. It's something you need to consider. Detoxification may be required. If you are on the anti-vax or I'm not sure side, I would suggest just stop all media feed for 2 weeks. Just stop it all. Videos about getting vaccinated from me, not Dr. Campbell's endless videos for each new report that comes out, he churns out, but actually stop all media feed, all news feed for 2 weeks. Don't go online. Turn your Wi-Fi hub off for 2 weeks. And then see how you feel when you go back online. We've got 3 months, 6 months, a year before there's no food at all in American grocery stores. Really, really helps people push videos, but it's completely untrue. Now, barring a Yellowstone eruption or a nuclear war, it's just not true. And I think they even know that themselves when they're pushing this line. And I think people who even watch it and subscribe to it and agree with them know it's untrue. You can look around you, you can see shortages, you can see problems. That doesn't necessarily then go, well, A follows B follows C, and there'll be no food in the store in 3 months from now. You've got to be very careful about what you do. You've got to make sure your preps and your lifestyle based as far as you can on reality, not on fantasy.
If you hate it, ignore it. If it's positive, engage with it. And if you don't know, research it.
This is mainly a prepping channel, so you can see from this upload of my recent videos what's attractive to my viewers and what isn't attractive to my viewers. Well, the stuff that's attractive to me isn't necessarily attractive to my viewers, and that's fine. But as soon as you put in negatives, if you put in anti-vax, if you put in misinformation, if you put in preppers are wrong, or if you argue with a prepper, like one of my biggest videos is why bug out bag philosophy is wrong, and I actually believe it is wrong, and it's well worth a watch. But anything negative gets way more comments, way more views than anything positive. It's more important to know about water filtration, and the video that hasn't had many views actually goes into different types of water purification in the real world and using real examples, rather than focus on why anti-vaxxers are misinformed. So that's one of the things you've got to be aware of. What are you watching? Why are you spending your focus and your attention on stuff that is negative? And there will be another video to this where I'm going to name the 12 major online anti-vaxxers. So if you've been getting their news feeds, or you've been getting stuff sent to you from other people based upon those 12 people, you've really got to stop subscribing those 12 people and really consider unfollowing and not sharing and not watching the people that are repeating that information. Doodles. This has been a Sleepy Terrier production 2021. Woofie!